Hi, I'm Joe Stumpf, and welcome to a very special by-referral-only interview with Azim Khamisa. And Azim is a very special man, and the best way to remember him, if you think of Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, and Tiger Woods may be the greatest golfer of all time, Azim would be the foremost expert on forgiveness. And today he's in the by-referral-only studios, and he's going to share with us his insights and his story about how he has fully embraced and integrated a level of forgiveness that we'd all like to experience. And my experience of meeting Azim was some dear friends of ours introduced us in a setting, a very kind of a gym setting. And I said to Azim, "So what do you do for a living?" And he said, "I teach forgiveness." And my first thought was, well, I teach how to build a by-referral-only business, and I know what qualifies me to do that. And I said to myself, I wonder what qualifies him to teach forgiveness. And then you said, well, why don't you read my books? And you gave me a couple of copies of your book. And I read your story, and I was just so taken by who you are and what you did in your life and how qualified you are to speak on the subject of forgiveness. And so I'm really grateful that you're here. And I think that might be a really good place to start, is to share your qualifications on why you can speak about forgiveness.
Let me say thank you for having me first for this interview. It's been a pleasure to meet you and to get to know you a little better.
Good.
But I was not an expert on forgiveness. I made a living as an international investment banker, and my degrees are in math and finance. What led me to this work was a personal tragedy. 15 years ago, my only son, I have a beautiful daughter, but he was my only son, was a student at San Diego State University. And he, was a great kid, a sophomore art student, generous, kind, great sense of humor. It's like a magnet. Charismatic. He worked on Fridays and Saturdays as a pizza delivery man for a local Italian restaurant not far from where he went to school. He was at San Diego State. And, make some extra money for college. And this was a delivery, the last delivery on a Saturday night in 1995 on January 21st. And he was lured to a bogus address in North Park. It's a middle-class area. Again, not far from where he went to school, by a youth gang. And he was in an apartment building. He knocked on several doors trying to find out who'd ordered the pizzas. And of course, nobody had, so he came back to the car, put the pizzas in the trunk of his Volkswagen, climbed into the driver's seat. As he was about to leave the scene of the crime, he was accosted by 4 youth gang members. 3 of them were 14-year-old, and the leader of the gang was an 18-year-old who handed a 9mm handgun to a 14-year-old. And as my son was trying to back out of the driveway, the gang leader gave the order, "Bust him, Bones." Bones was his gang nickname, and the 14-year-old fired 1 round, which entered my son's body under the left armpit, traveled across the upper part of his chest, and actually exited under the right armpit. But it was fatal. And he died a couple of minutes later, drowning in his own blood over a lousy pizza at the age of 20. So needless to say, it brought my world to a crashing halt. I don't know what's more complex than to lose a child. And those early days were devastating. You go through all the emotions. You're like a zombie. You don't need your biological function sense. I was suicidal at one point. Did not know how to go live without my son. He was with me for 20 years. Right. So it's like becoming a toddler again. You've got to learn to live a whole new life. Yeah. But I have survived it. Yeah. What led me to the work I'm doing today was that tragedy. It was a life-changing event for me. I lived in a different world. Prior to when my son was alive, I speak a half a dozen languages. I was born in Kenya. My roots are Eastern, and I was educated in England. And I moved here in the middle 70s to get away from Idi Amin, this crazy guy in Kenya, because we were a minority, and thinking my children would be safe in America. So it was very ironic that Tariq was taken away on a country that I'd picked for him. But prior to his death, a lot of my work in the banking and investment banking field was international. And so I traveled the world and came in, changed suitcases from London, went to Tokyo, and then couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
So because he was killed by a youth gang, I wanted to learn more about why kids join gangs. And I was appalled. And I asked some very elementary questions. It's like, why do our kids join gangs? And the answers I got horrified me. I was told they join gangs to get respect, like, I'm a tough, macho guy.
Right.
Because gang members are respected by their peers. Often their peers will dress like gang members. Or they join gangs because they live in areas where if they don't join this gang, they're targeted by a rival gang. A lot of racial gangs, In San Diego, we have the Hispanics and the African American and the Asian and the white gangs. So they join for protection. Or they join gangs to get a sense of belonging because they may not have it in their own house. Right. And I met a lot of gang members now in the last 15 years. And it shocked me that some of these gang members are fourth or fifth generation of gang members. So they were born into that culture. They really had no choice.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this doesn't make sense. We are the richest nation in the world. It's not about money. We have enough money to do anything we want, and we often do.
Right.
So what are we doing to make sure our kids, and they join gangs. The kid that killed my son joined a gang in 6th grade, 11 years old.
Yeah.
We're playing with toys, not guns.
Yeah.
So I asked the question, how bad is the problem? And it's huge. 75 kids get shot every day. If that was not a travesty, another 200 plus kids are arrested for violent crime every single day.
Yeah. And it's in that exploration, in that discovery, in that research that you've done is the unfolding of your own forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I took a different response to this, Joe, than maybe a lot of other people would have. I saw there were victims at both ends of the gun.
Right.
I saw my son was a victim of the 14-year-old gang member. I saw the 14-year-old gang member a victim of our society. We've created this society. Society is not happenstance. Every American is responsible for the society we've created. I'm a first-generation naturalized American citizen, but I am an American. And this kid that killed my son was also an American. So I had that empathy for him, that I felt that as an American citizen, I must take my share of the responsibility for the bullet that took my son's life. And really, so should every caring American. So 9 months after Tariq died, I created the Azim Khamisa Foundation. And essentially our mission statement is stop kids from killing kids by breaking the cycle of youth violence. And we essentially have 3 mandates. Our first one is to save lives of children. It doesn't have to be your child that dies. When a child dies in any community, we're all diminished. Our second mandate is to teach the principles, empower the principles of nonviolence and compassion and peace. And our third is to make sure that they don't end up dead like Tariq or end up in a gang like the kid that killed my son. And soon after I started the foundation, I reached out in forgiveness to the grandfather and guardian of my son's killer. So he's been with me the entire 15 years because I met him. Plez Felix is his name. Okay. And we've been together now for 15 years. The foundation is very active in schools. It's grown to about 50 employees. We've reached hundreds of thousands of kids live. We've reached millions by our broadcast into the classrooms. We've developed 6 programs. And one of our programs, which is the signature program, is called the Violence Impact Forum, which we are regularly in schools in San Diego. So if you have people that are viewing this, want to come witness our programs, they can contact us. It is transformative because the program starts with me and the grandfather.
Yeah, I've seen that on YouTube where the two of you start out and the kids are just in the audience saying, how could the two of you be together?
Yes, we don't even have to say anything.
Yeah.
We just have to show up because we're introduced. This man's grandson killed this man's son, and here they are together in the spirit of forgiveness and compassion. And it's a very, very powerful image. And of course, he's like a brother to me now. I mean, he's as close to me as a brother. We've been together for 15 years. We speak together at schools. We speak to other venues as well. And also we hang out together. You know, I mean, I see him often, or we go for walks or go for dinner.
So the qualifications to talk about forgiveness come from your deep personal experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've learned a lot since then.
Yeah.
You know, the journey started there.
Yes.
But what it has done for me is pretty amazing.
Well, I'm excited to ask you some questions now that can lead us in the direction of how can forgiveness propel us towards prosperity.
Okay.
As I know in your work, you've worked with helping people have more fulfillment, how to bulletproof themselves from the spirit of harm or the spirit of hurt, and now how to really become more prosperous by becoming more peaceful.
Right.
And that's what we talked about. And
Right.
so the first question I would love to ask you is what if you really want to forgive somebody? I mean, in your heart, you say, I really want to forgive them, but I don't even know where to start.
Right.
And because I mean, in my own life, I could probably think of 3 things today that I probably need to work on.
Right.
What's the starting point? What's a formula if there is one?
Right.
Yeah.
And I get the question a lot. I think a lot of people do want to forgive, but do not know how. And I've created, I've written a lot on forgiveness, on the journey that I took. Is also available on audio and DVD. And essentially, it's the journey I took.
Yeah.
So I'm going to address the 2 aspects of forgiveness, because when you look at our society, right, we are either in resentment of what somebody did to us,
Right.
or somebody harmed us, or we are in guilt of something we may have done to somebody else. So forgiveness, there's 2 aspects of it. The first aspect is to forgive somebody who's harmed you. The second aspect is to look at self-forgiveness for the harm you've caused. So I'm going to address on this particular question the aspect of how do you forgive somebody who's harmed you.
Okay.
And self-forgiveness, we'll maybe take it on a later episode.
Okay. And this is just, you perceive they've harmed you.
Yes.
You have this thought that they've harmed you. They may not have harmed you, but you're thinking they've harmed you.
Yes, I mean, usually perception is reality.
Right.
In my case, Tariq was killed for no reason, wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
So when you go into that, you go into that thinking, why did it happen to me? And I think one of the things I teach now is that in the book, The Secrets of the Bulletproof Spirit, I talk about the difference between people is either they are spiritually resilient or spiritually fragile. And the difference between somebody who's spiritually resilient and who is spiritually fragile is information and inspiration. It's kind of what I provide. So to come back to your question, when you are trying to forgive somebody who's harmed you, whether it's perception or whether it's reality, I teach that there are 3 major milestones. The first one is to acknowledge that you have been wronged. Now, this is a grieving process. I'm a Sufi Muslim. In our faith, we have 40 days after somebody dies allocated for nothing other than grieving. You're not supposed to cook or clean house. I had people from my mosque come every day, clean my house, and brought me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I thought, I had so much food in my house. I live by myself. I thought, what do I do with this? And they all want to know what happened, especially because Tariq was tragically murdered.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even say. I would say, Tariq, I couldn't say the word died.
Yeah.
It would take me forever to get that word out. It was like having a 2,000 watt, It's the thing, I cannot repeat this story one more time.
Right. But that's
Because
part of
now,
the healing process.
that's part of the healing process. It's like taking the scab off the wound.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
But when the scab reforms, it's a little smaller.
Yeah.
So after 40 days, I was given the advice from a spiritual mentor that stops the grieving process. Because the soul, according to our belief and our tradition, stays in close proximity of the loved ones and the family for the 40 days that are allocated for grieving. After the 40 days, the soul goes to a different consciousness in preparation of its future journey. So I think of Tariq not as dead, but at home. I feel him spiritually. I can't feel him materially. I can't touch him or hug him, but I can feel him in a spiritual way. So my spiritual mentor told me, instead of grieving after 40 days, because if you continuously grieve, you're going to impede your son's journey in the other world. Why don't you do some good deeds in his name? Because good deeds are spiritual currency that will transfer to him and help him, will provide high-octane fuel for his forward journey.
Oh, beautiful.
Why don't they teach you this stuff in college, you know?
I know.
It's a great concept.
Yeah. Or just permission to grieve. I mean, we're back
Yes,
to work tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I teach that you grieve.
Yeah.
Now, 40 days wasn't enough.
It's a
It took me 3.5 years before I even laughed or smiled.
Yeah.
I had no social life. I started the foundation. I wrote my first book.
Mm.
And I did a lot of meditation. And I used to meditate an hour a day. In the aftermath, I was doing 5 and 6. Today, my practice is a couple of hours a day.
Mm.
So what I teach is the first thing is you have to grieve. You know, you don't want to go and get a Prozac or, you know, because 5 hours later, go take another Prozac.
Exactly.
Forgiveness sustains, you know.
Yeah.
So it's painful.
Mm.
But the point I also want to make here is you've got to stop grieving, because if you don't stop grieving, you remain a victim. So the second part of the forgiveness formula, as you called it,
Yeah.
is to give up all the resulting resentment. Okay?
Mm.
Now Mandela didn't write this quote, but he made it famous. He said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for your enemy to die."
Yes.
So the point here is, if you stay in resentment, who are you hurting?
Exactly.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Why take such meager real estate of your psyche and have it occupied by somebody who's harmed you?
Yeah.
Why not forgive so love and joy can live there, which can lead to prosperity?
Yeah.
So the idea here is that you do this piece through empathy and intention.
Mm.
When your intentions are clear, and I have a free guided meditation on forgiveness on my website that can be downloaded, because I think when you set your intentions at alpha, when you meditate, the universe then will make it happen.
Yeah.
Because intentions equals results.
Yeah.
There's a good friend of mine teaches that. So with having clear intentions and meditating on it and developing a sense of empathy, you know, you can give up the resulting resentment.
Mm.
And the third piece is to reach out. Is to reach out to the offender, but not just reach out, but reach out with love and compassion. As I was able to reach out. I met the grandfather 9 months after Tariq died. I met the kid who killed my son 5 years later, went to see him in prison and forgave him. And he's now doing really well and passed his GED and doing college courses.
Mm.
And I'm working very hard to get him out of prison so he can join us.
Fantastic.
Think about the power of him on stage with his grandfather and me. And he's totally transformed. He's not a violent human being anymore. Now, not everybody has to reach out to the killer of their child.
Yeah.
Very often, you know, it's father-son. I get a lot of that, mother-daughter, or vice versa, ex-wives, ex-husbands, business partners. A lot of that. Clients, yes. So, you know, you have to reach out.
Yeah.
Because I think that, and sometimes it's hard to do it by yourself,
Yeah.
but you can do it through an intermediary. I've helped many, you know, or you can use an intermediary. It could be somebody at your church or somebody who is a mutual friend that can make that, or you can write a letter or whatever, you know. I waited 5 years, Joe, to meet the kid who killed my son, because I thought, you know, I don't know how I'm going to react when I come eyeball to eyeball with him.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, I didn't need to wait that long,
Yeah.
because it was very freeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the formula that I teach, you know.
Very good. So, in which one of your publications, in your books and your audios, where we would find more about that process, that three-step
The
process?
second book, From Forgiveness to Fulfillment. All of my books have paragraphs on forgiveness. The second book, I actually have a chapter on each of these 3 steps. There's also an audio course, which I call Forgiveness, the Crown Jewel of Personal Freedom. It's about personal freedom.
Right.
And that has 4 CDs in it
Yeah.
and has workbooks.
Yeah.
So how do you develop empathy? There's an exercise on that.
Good.
So-
Well, there's right on the screen here, there's a website where you can go to and order any of that material. So, thank you.
Okay.
Azim, the second question is, what if I forgive, and is that saying that I'm actually condoning the behavior of the person who offended me?
No, a lot of people think that by forgiving, you are condoning the behavior of the offender. It's not about the offender. The offender is going to have to pay for his consequences. Either like Tony, is now in prison, and he was actually given a very long life sentence. He was tried as an adult at the age of 14.
Wasn't that the first time that had happened? Yeah.
He was the first 14-year-old in the state of California to be tried as an adult.
Yeah, so he's been punished.
Yeah, because in juvenile court, they can only keep you till you're 25.
Okay.
If they take you to adult court, they can put you away for life.
And what was his sentence?
25 years to life with parole, because I was consulted. Paul Finks was our district attorney at that time. And I told him I want him to get the most lenient sentence. I wasn't about revenge and resentment, and because, hanging him from the highest pole doesn't bring my son back, or doesn't improve how does it help society, right? But when you have murdered somebody and you go to adult court, there are only two sentences you can get. One is 25 years to life with parole, or 25 years to life without parole. The 18-year-old who gave the order to shoot my son had killed a homeless person just six weeks before he masterminded the tragedy that took my son's life. So he just shot a homeless person outside a liquor store just to show off to his homeboys that he was vicious, that if they didn't obey him, he was capable of taking their lives. So he got 2 life sentences without parole.
Okay.
And I reached out to, I didn't reach out to him directly, but I did reach out to his brother. I told him if he wants to write to me, I'm happy to speak with him. The other two kids that were involved with this tragedy, I've met one of them, and also met his father. So it's not about the offender. If they don't get punished like Tony is, they're going to get punished via karma. I believe what goes around comes around. So I think that we should leave judgment to God. The Bible teaches that too. In fact, I think forgiveness is a very central piece of Christianity, of all faiths really, including mine really. And I think that in many ways, we humans are here to learn forgiveness. Because Christ, as they're nailing him to the cross, he says, "Forgive them, Father, they do not know what they do with," right? So forgiveness is really about you. So I always teach that judgment is a very low vibrationary emotion, and we judge so quickly in our culture. How people dress, how people drive. Look at the road rage, right? And when you live in those low vibrationary emotions, there's no happiness, there's no joy, there's no prosperity. Prosperity lives in the high vibrationary emotions of empathy, compassion, goodwill, friendship, trust, forgiveness. Forgiveness is right there with love. So when you forgive, you're forgiving for you. It's a healthy, selfish act. And I'll tell you a story. I was in Hawaii speaking to a bunch of social workers, and his name was Merton Chinnan. He was very moved with my story. And he said to me, "Azim, what I want you to do, I have a lot of social workers that work with victims. Would you teach them forgiveness? Because if they can teach forgiveness to victims, we can create a lot of healing here, because there's so many people suffering, because violence is so rampant in our culture. We are by far the most violent society in the world. In the world. And I'll give you an example of that. The Economist, which is a newspaper that many of you will be familiar with, it's a very good magazine, did a study. They took 25 countries in the world, first world countries, England, Japan, Holland, Germany, France. And they added all the kids that die as a result of gun violence in those 25 countries. They took the total and multiplied that by 11. That is how many we lose in the United States of America.
Were that significantly
higher? 75 kids. Get shot daily now. 16 die. The others end up in wheelchairs. These are kids, Joe.
Under 18.
Yes, 12 through 18, 12 to 19, and every day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of healing necessary. So I went and spoke to these 25 social workers. It was a very powerful event. And then one of the professors at the Brigham Young University has a chapter in Oahu that teach social work. And he found out I was on the island, so he said, "Please come talk to my students." So I went to talk to some undergraduate students that were doing degrees in social work, and at the end of my talk, this one girl came up to me and handed me a letter. And I could tell when I was speaking to her, her eyes were welling up with tears, and I could see there was some transformation going on in her life. And when she came up to me and gave me this letter, I was talking to 4 other students. She said to me, "Thank you, Mr. Khamisa." But people say thank you to you all the time. I really felt her gratitude. It was like she said thank you with every cell of her body. I just could feel the energy of it. And I didn't think of it. I put it in my pocket, and went to. They took me to a nice barbecue, what they call luau, or something like that. And there was some shows, and then I finally go to the hotel, exhausted about midnight. It was 1 a.m, and you empty your pockets before you go to bed. And I found this letter. So I sit down and read it, and it just brought tears to my eyes. And I still remember that letter. And she said, "Dear brother Khamisa," she says, "I know you've told your story many times. But 5 years ago, I was raped. And I had built this wall of anger, resentment, revenge. Your words pummeled that wall with a wrecking ball." It's a good writer.
I like that.
Yeah. It's a good visual,
Yeah.
"I shall seek the path of forgiveness and build something more reverent in the place of this wall.
That's beautiful.
And I shall help a wayward youth make better choices." That was her gift to me, because I'm very youth-oriented.
Yeah.
Now, she was probably in her mid-20s. It's a time when you're thinking about, maybe meeting somebody in college and planning a life together, getting married. And she couldn't do that because of that wall of resentment and revenge and anger because of what happened to her. So it's really not about the abuser.
Yeah.
It's about you.
That's perfect. And you can go right to the website that's on your screen right here and learn more about how to forgive and not make it about the condoner. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So our third question is, what do we do when we find ourselves in a relationship with somebody we would call an abuser? How do you deal with that in a real life situation?
Yes, that happens a lot. And very often the abusers can also be family members. I get a lot of incest cases. The first thing is to remove yourself from that abusing environment. There's a lot of help out there. We have a lot of nonprofits that help you to get out of there, because I find a lot of people stay in these abusive relationships, and one of the things I encourage them is to get out.
Right.
We talked about that in my 3rd book, The Secret of the Bulletproof Spirit, that you got to walk out of that door, and you got to cross that chasm. You can't cross a chasm in 2 steps. You got to take that leap of faith, because beyond that door is a whole new world out there that can help you. So the first thing is to remove yourself from that abusing relationship.
So
and obviously, once you remove it, you still have to get through that forgiveness piece.
Right.
But every hit, we all get hard hits.
Right.
But every hit has spiritual bullion in it.
Say more about that.
Well, I lost my son.
Yeah.
And in there was my life's work. That was the gift that came out of it. We all have a spiritual purpose. My spiritual purpose was not to be an international investment banker. Sure, I make money doing that. But the work that I'm doing today is so much more profound. The Tariq Khamisa Foundation is known internationally. I speak all over the world. I just got back from Europe, going to Australia in September. And the work that I do in terms of even speaking to adults, and this interview that we're doing right now, that was my calling. It came out of a tragedy. We all have a calling. Now, maybe somebody who's being abused, right, could get out of that situation, right, go through that door, get through that empathy, because most abusers will also have history of abusing. The kid that killed my son, if you look at his history, he was born to a 15-year-old. His father was 16, didn't want him, met him 3 times, beat him up. So you have to have that empathy that most abusers probably have. I've never met an offender that was not a victim. And the worse the offense, the worse the victimization.
And what about on the abuser side, on the abused side?
Yes, and so I'm saying that
Yeah.
if you look at it, if you are the victim of an abuser,
Yeah,
once you're out of that, eventually you may be able to help
yeah,
another kid that is being abused
Right.
in your journey.
yeah.
See, this is where the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Well, what I love about that, that is a purpose to get out.
Yes.
You know, I mean, if it's going to pull you out the door, is what you might be able to do to help people who are in a situation that you're in.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because, I think it was Albert Schweitzer who said that I don't know what your destiny is going to be, but the one thing I can tell you, that if you're going to find happiness, it is going to come out of service,
Yeah.
helping somebody else.
Yeah.
And we all have that need,
Yeah.
and I'm so fortunate, really, to do this work,
Yeah.
because it's all about transformation and healing.
Yeah. So speak directly to an abuser right now. They're in a situation, they're being abused. What would be the get out and
Yes, go through the door
Yeah.
is the first thing that I would tell them, is
and
to
then
get
what?
out,
Get out and
and get some help.
yeah.
Get some help. And there are many organizations that deal with all kinds of issues, whether it's incest, whether it is violence, whether it is death, and then go through the forgiveness piece.
Right.
Because you need to, at some point, you have to grieve. There's
Mhm.
going to be the grieving priest. You've got to go through that, giving up all the resentment. You've got to go through that forgiving, and then get involved.
Yeah.
Get involved with somebody and help other kids from your journey. I mean, I gave a talk at an event, and this was a gentleman that got up, and he was probably in his 50s, I want to say.
Yeah.
And he had this guilt because his sister was very much abused when they were young, and they couldn't do anything. And it still bothered him.
Right.
And he still hadn't been able to do anything till I told him that, he said, I couldn't help my sister. I really have this burden on me. And I just want to, do something about it. And I suggested to him, I said, you couldn't help your sister, but you can help somebody else's sister.
Mhm. Perfect.
And you could see his face just lit up
Yeah, yeah.
because I gave him a window,
Yeah,
I said, I'm doing this work, as a result of losing Tariq.
Yeah.
It is in the doing that the healing happens,
Yeah.
right?
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were speaking to an abuser now and they asked you, out of your 3 books, which book, if they could only buy one, which one should they get right now?
I think the third one.
Okay.
I think the Secrets of the Bulletproof Spirit.
Yeah.
That book, the subtitle is How to Bounce Back from Life's Hardest Hits.
Right.
It is written in a, kind of a hand on your shoulder, soft way. It has 5 different sections. And each section has 5 or 6 paragraphs. And I can give you a couple of examples, because obviously there's 30 chapters.
Yeah.
So there are like 30 different secrets. And
Right.
obviously we don't have time to talk about
Well,
all of those
give
30.
One that for the person who's in an abusive situation right now.
Okay. Because there's a chapter, okay? The title of it is When You See with Real Eyes, You Realize. Now this was inspired by my meeting Tony, the kid that took my son's life. I remember I'm meditating for thousands of hours before I actually went to meet him. But I realized that for my forgiveness journey to be complete, I'd eventually have to come eyeball to him. And when I met him, we had this period when that exactly happened. I wanted to talk to him because he was the last person to see my son. There were some, holes in the story which he was able to, tell me and complete. And then, I noticed that he was 19 when I met him, that he didn't have the typical behavior of a 19-year-old. I could see that my hand of forgiveness had transformed him too. He was very well-spoken, well-mannered, he was remorseful, he'd asked for my forgiveness, although it was given to him before he asked for it.
Right.
I could see that this was a kid that was a likable kid.
Right.
If he walked in here, you would have the same impression of him. So I'm looking into his eyes, Joe,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking I want to find the murderer in him. And what happened to me while I was looking in his eyes, the eyes are the windows of your soul. when I looked into his eyes, I was able to climb down and touch his humanity. And I realized that this person is another soul, much like me. Sure, he'd killed an innocent, unarmed human being. It's the worst thing you can do in your life. But that does not make him inhuman. He's another human being. He has the same light and source of the soul as I do. So that inspired the chapter, that when you look with the real eyes, you realize.
Yeah.
Sometimes these are not the real eyes.
Yeah.
So it was a very transformative experience, not only for me, but for him too.
Yeah. And you can go to the website right below and get a copy of that book right now. Azim, the fourth question is, what do I do with my anger?
You know, anger is something we all experience on a daily basis. I work hard at not going to anger. But anger is energy, and you can channel it. It reminds me of a lady by the name of Anita Roddick. She passed on. She was the one that created the company Bath,
Bath and Beyond?
something like that.
Right,
Yeah, a lot of malls have it, but everything they sell is environmentally friendly. And I actually met her.
Body and Bath.
Body in Bath, yes, the
right.
one, yeah. And I actually met her, and she was English lady,
Yeah.
lived in Bath, and continuously traveled between the UK and America. I mean, sometimes in the same week she'll be speaking at both places. And we spoke at a conference together in New York. And I said, how do you do this, Anita? This is a lot of travel. You know, they call it the pond, but it's a 7-hour flight. And she says, I do it because of my anger. And I said, explain that to me. And she says, I'm angry because we are destroying the planet. And that anger led me to create this company that is environmentally friendly. And we don't sell products that abuse the environment. I've also started a college in Bath where she's training executives, C-level executives, that you just don't have a profit and loss statement with the one column that shows whether you made a profit or not. It's the company that is successful needs to have 3 columns. Sure, make a profit, financial profit. But you've got to have a column that says, how did you improve the environment?
Right.
How did you improve humanity? Yeah. And one of the guys that has written a lot on anger is Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese monk. You may know him.
Yeah,
He's probably written 80, 90 books or periodicals. And Being Peace is one of my favorites. I actually met him too, because I introduced him at a Dharma talk that he did. And even when he talks, he gets 3,000-4,000 people.
Yeah.
And he can tell you about how to eat an orange and have you totally mesmerized.
I've seen that.
For an hour. You've seen that. So I asked him, when I said, because I wanted to look at this question about anger. Yeah. And I said to him, do you ever get angry? And he says, no, not really. I says, you never get angry? He says, no. He says, not really. I said, you've written so much about anger. And I wasn't going to let it go, So I was trying to get an answer. Angry. Yeah. So I said, well, have you ever been angry? I get an answer from him. He says, yes, I see what you're going. I said, well, what do you do when you get angry? He says, I said, hello, old friend. Hello. You're back. I give him my favorite seat. I serve him my favorite cookies, my best tea, Because the point he was trying to make is, you have to embrace it. You can't, because whatever you resist persists. So anger is something that we teach kids. You don't want to act when you are angry, because when you are angry, you are not acting, you are reacting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You always make the bad choice. My way, if I do have anger come up, right, I'm now able to preempt it. Yeah. I sit in a corner and breathe in peace, inhale peace, and exhale anger. Because sometimes what happens is some stuff happens where anger comes up, but if you're conscious of it, you can actually preempt it. So I don't find myself getting angry that much. I just only might drive up here, somebody cut me off, and that's bless, release, and forgive. We can do this on a daily basis, because once you get into this idea of learning how to forgive, especially the smaller stuff, and that's a good way to kill anger too. Meditation is also a good way to do it. But the thing is, that you never ever want to resist anger. You never want to act when you are angry. You can channel it, as example by Anita Roddick.
Yeah, she channeled it with creativity. And that's what it looks like to me, is that you've taken some of that anger and have used that creative energy to build your foundation and write your books.
Absolutely, because it's energy. Essentially, at the end of the day, anger, it's a negative kind of an energy, but you can transform it. I always call, the prism of the soul, you can transform negative energy into a positive laser.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you do that? And forgiveness is a very big part of it in my story.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, tendency is you will stay angry or you stay in resentment. And if you stay there, I mean, another good example is O.J. Simpson's, case, which is very famous. Goldman's father was so,
stayed there for years.
Yeah, and eventually that became cancer.
Yeah.
Because that he never was able to get up his anger.
Yeah.
And O.J. is playing golf in Miami. It's very corrosive.
Yeah.
So it's good to channel it or transform it and do something positive with it.
And create something from it. Yeah. And I put the website to your foundation on the screen here. And could you just take just 1 minute right now about how you created the foundation?
Well, the foundation was created, really my inspiration initially was my spiritual mentor that said, instead of grieving, do some good deeds for your son, because their spiritual currency will transfer to transfer to the soul of your son and provide high octane fuel for his forward journey. Yeah. So I thought the foundation, by its mandate, always does good, compassionate deeds. That's what we do, because we are saving kids. We're empowering the right choices. Yeah. We are teaching the principles of nonviolence and forgiveness, right? Yeah. So my initial inspiration was, I don't want to impede my son's journey. I wanted to provide that high-octane fuel. Yeah. So by creating the foundation, and it's named after him. His name is on it. It's called the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. So all of these good deeds we are doing in the foundation benefit his spirit going forward. As a parent, you want to do something for your child. Right. You go on vacation, you're going to buy something for your child before you buy something for you. Yeah. But how do you do something for your child who's no longer here? Well, you can by doing by doing good and compassionate deeds, which are spiritual currency. Yeah. So that was my inspiration. But once I decided to start the foundation for Tariq, it brought that energy back into me. Yeah, got it. Make sense? Yeah. Because now I had a purpose. Yeah. It still gets me up. Yeah. I got to go out and do some good deeds. And I always say it's a good day when I get to get in front of kids. Yeah. And I do that a lot. Oh. And I love it. Yeah. Because it's doing good deeds.
And how does that get funded?
It's done by donors. I mean, we have, unfortunately, eventually I hope that the school districts will come in. But right now, we live by donors. We've created what we call a Seeds of Hope Society. Yeah. So if you want to help a classroom, you give $1,000 a year and give it for 5 years. If you want to help a classroom, you give $5,000 a year if you are able to pay more money. Again, you make a 5-year commitment. If you want to help a community, you give $10,000 a year. Yeah. It's kind of like, $1,000 is like a latte a day if you go to Starbucks. And I always tell people, don't give up your latte, buy one for the kid and we'll do the work. Or you can take them to lunch, which is $5,000, or you can take them to dinner, it's like $10,000. And we now have about 550 seeds members that give us anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, and I have sustainable funding.
And that's a lot of your work today, traveling around.
Yes. Yeah. I speak at a lot of events, and we also generate a lot of seeds members through a good friend of mine. His name is Brian Clemmer. Yeah. He teaches. He'd be a good person for you to interview.
He wrote the Samurai.
I speak at his Heart of the Samurai, which is one of. Actually, I've done his work too. Okay. And we get a lot of seeds members from him. He's very committed to help us. Yeah, okay. And we do our own fundraising events, and then we also apply for grants. We get some public grants and some private grants. But in the schools that we are making a huge difference. We've been able to reduce violence anywhere from 25 to 51%. There was just a newscast on KPBS last week about a work we're doing at Dana Middle in Point Loma, where they've actually done our programs there, and I've noticed a 51% reduction in violence. So it's working. So at some point, I'm hoping that the Department of Education will see that the work TKF is doing, because we have 6 programs. Yeah. And once you throw all of them into the school, the kids are very thirsty. I mean, we do work in middle school, it's pin drop silence. So the idea is that eventually, if we can get funding from the education, because public education is free. We spend $7,000 giving free education. TKF can throw all 6 programs for under $300 a kid a year. So it's not expensive.
Right.
If you spend $7,300, we could be in every classroom in the country, maybe in the world. And that's one of my visions eventually, is to teach these principles through our story.
So here's what I hear is the power of any anger you have has been so channeled into building the TKF Foundation here.
Yes.
Yeah, and I put the TKF Foundation website here on the screen, and if people want to donate or find out more about that, they can go there and take a look at it.
Thank you. Yeah, tkf.org. It's an easy website to remember, and they can go. And we also have another campaign called Stop Kids from Killing Kids, and that's also is a website, stopkidsfromkillingkids.org.
Beautiful.
And we're doing, our goal there is to raise $1 million, and also not just dollars, but also make 1 million people aware of the work we're doing.
Perfect.
So that campaign is also out there.
Yeah. Well, we can start right now. The 5th question is, what's in it for me to forgive?
Yes, I think that's a good question, Joe, because I think we all want peace. And that's my 4th book. I just finished it. It's not out yet. It's called From Fulfillment to Peace. And forgiveness really is the portal to peace and to prosperity. Because if you stay in resentment, right, or if you stay in anger, right, or you stay in victimhood, right, there's no quality of life. I had a very full life when my son was alive.
Right.
I traveled the world, and I made good money as an international investment banker. I sat on boards, although most of the charitable boards I sat on were arts, like the theater and the symphony. Today, my work is very different, but I also have a very full life.
Right.
I didn't want to go through life on crutches. Feel sorry for me. I lost my one and only son. And I know people do feel sorry for me. I get that a lot. But there's no quality going through life as a victim. I didn't want to do that. I wanted my full life back, you know. And I had no clue when I started this work. I made a decision 15 years ago.
Right.
And today I said to myself, my God, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, the good Lord. My mom was a very big spiritual influence on me. And I thank her for the eyes I had to transcend something that was so negative to a positive place. So forgiveness, there's a lot in it for everybody, because if you stay angry or in resentment or victim, you're not playing full. Or if you stay in guilt, because you know, some of the stuff we're going to talk about hopefully is self-forgiveness. So you know, you find this a lot, that either you know, we are in resentment or we are in guilt. Both of these are highly debilitating emotions. Yeah. So you're not getting a peace. If you're not at peace and if you're not experiencing joy, very difficult to get to prosperity, because you got to play out full. You know, you need every morsel of your energy and passion, right, to go out. I mean, I had no qualifications in social work. You know, I was trained in math and finance. But TKF's programs are leading edge and known worldwide, right? They come from the ability to play full. So my idea is that, you know, if you're looking at forgiveness, it is something, it's a healthy, selfish act. It's definitely, what I've, you know, in the journey that I wrote my 4th book is because of the work that I have done in this last 15 years with the kids and the adults, right? I find that I have a very high level of peace, and I'm at peace when it comes to losing my son. Came through forgiveness. And one of the things that the book is based on is something that I keep a very active journal. And this particular journal entry was inspired by 9/11. Heavy on everyone's heart, a little heavier on mine because I'm a Muslim. And the perpetrators were Muslims. It's not about the faith, I can assure you, it's politics, because the same faith helped me to get to forgiveness. But it was heavy on my heart. And I thought to myself, you know, how was I able to get to forgiveness? And what came out of this is a good question to ask, or it's a good quote to put into this question, and is essentially what I call my peace formula. So it starts like this: sustained goodwill creates friendship.
Sustained goodwill.
Sustained goodwill creates friendship. And that ought to be obvious. Because you don't make friends by bombing people,
No.
right? You make
Sustain
friends
over periods of time.
Yeah, because look at your friends.
Right.
You've done a lot of things over many years. So sustained goodwill creates friendship. Sustained friendship creates trust. Sustained trust creates empathy. Sustained empathy creates compassion. Sustained compassion creates peace.
Yeah.
It's a peace formula.
Mm-hmm.
Goodwill, friendship, trust, empathy, compassion, peace. But people ask me, how do you extend goodwill to the person who murdered your child? I tell them it's done through forgiveness. Worked for me. It worked for my family. What's miraculous, it worked for him. It worked for his family. It can work for you. And it can work for anybody who's watching it and their family. It can work for Israel and Palestine, if you like, or North Korea. It can work with the USA. So this is what is in it for me, is that through forgiveness, I was able to get to peace. And I know that, and because I am at peace, I know we can all be at peace.
Yeah.
And I have no education in religion or in psychology or therapy. Or I'm not a minister. I'm an investment banker. If anything, I have a PhD in greed and avarice. So if I can do it, most anybody can do it.
Perfect. Well, if they go to the website right here on the screen, they can find out about all of your work that you've done on forgiveness, so you can experience this great level of peace.
Yes, there's quite a bit there. And I think this is important to say that there is a lot of hope in this work that I've done. It's providing a lot of hope for people that want to go down that path. Yeah. Because the journey is forgiveness, but the destination is peace and prosperity.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. The sixth question is, what do you do with just a heinous act, like the Holocaust, something that's just unspeakable? Where do you find forgiveness in that type of behavior?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good question as well, because you're right. The Holocaust is an unspeakable tragedy in our history.
Right. And there's been lots of ethnic cleansing.
Plenty of happening, genocide, ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
There is a lot of tragedies.
Yeah.
And how do you get to forgiveness there?
Yeah.
Now, as I said, I cannot speak for 6 million Jews or people that have suffered from ethnic cleansing or genocide. We had a lot of that. However, if you were one of the victims of the Holocaust, there's a very good story about Ibiza. She came out of that whole Rwanda massacre.
Right.
Hidden.
Where she stood in her bedroom there and she watched
actually
it kill.
met her. But at the end of the day, if you are a survivor of a Holocaust or of a genocide, right, you have the same choice to make as I had to make. Do you want to continue going through life as a victim, or do you want to forgive and build a better life, a happier life, a peaceful life, a healthier life, a joyful life, a prosperous life? One of the people I've met as a result of my work, I've been very fortunate. I met the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, and I also met Elie Wiesel. He was a Holocaust survivor. And we are in a movie. There's a movie called The Power of Forgiveness. It's a documentary. There's a half a dozen stories in it. And there's one story, and my story is the last one in that particular piece. You can Google it, Power of Forgiveness. Beautifully done.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about that in From Murder to Forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah, and you list out all of the different people who were getting the awards.
Yes.
That was fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And Elie Wiesel is in this.
Yeah.
And there's a piece about Elie Wiesel going to Bundestag, which is the cabinet for Germany in Bonn. Bonn is the capital. It's the White House of Germany, and he's in the cabinet room talking to the German cabinet, and he says he's giving a speech, and he says to them, "I want to thank you because you've done a lot for Jews in Germany since the Holocaust, and I appreciate that you've helped." Many Jews in terms of monetary and other services. But the one thing you haven't done is you have not asked for our forgiveness. Why don't you ask for our forgiveness? It's really animating.
Yeah, right.
It's like a shoe on the podium is, why don't you ask for our forgiveness? A week later, the chancellor, who is like the president of Germany, goes to Tel Aviv, to the Knesset, and addresses the Israeli cabinet and asks for their forgiveness. It's very moving.
Wow.
So it shows you that
Yeah.
this can also happen at an international level.
Yeah.
We've tried the eye for an eye strategy for 2,000 years. Where's that gotten us?
Blind.
Yeah, you can't destroy dark with dark.
Yeah.
When you go in a dark room, you put a light on, it's not dark anymore.
Yeah.
Every war, right, is created another war.
Yeah.
It's Gandhi, an eye for an eye, and soon the whole world is blind, which is a very famous Gandhi quote.
Yeah.
So, I think at the end of the day, I think forgiveness has the opportunity to create peace within us, which I think I'm blessed to have experienced that at a very deep level.
Yeah.
And because I am at peace, I vibrate mostly at these high vibrationary emotions, which is the subject of my fourth book.
Yeah.
Now, we all have a bad hair day, right? I get angry too, but at least I know I've fallen off the wagon then, right? So you meditate, forgive, and you get back on the wagon.
Exactly.
So, but it happens less and less. I think as you find that you live in this space, and it's healthy. I mean, when I wrote my first book, there wasn't much on forgiveness.
Yeah.
But in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of clinical studies done, and there are there's scientific evidence available that forgiveness is good for your health.
Well, no matter what a person's going through, it can be their own personal Holocaust right now.
Right.
They have to put themselves in the path of some new insight, some new thinking, and your books and all your materials are a great place for them to start. And if they go right to the website, you can begin the journey of complete forgiveness. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah. Azim, the seventh question is, I just love this question because what if the person who has done the offense, what if they could give a damn? They don't care whether you forgive them or not. They're just, they'll make a difference to me.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Right. Again, you have to look at yourself first. But here's interesting. When I forgave Tony, right?
Yeah.
It was long before he had shifted. I reached out to his grandfather 9 months after Tariq died.
Yeah.
It took about 2 years for them to decide whether Tony should be tried as an adult or as a juvenile. Now, prior to that hearing, where they decided to try him as a juvenile, Tony was very angry. He thought the pizza delivery man was stupid. He thought his grandfather was stupid. He thought the district attorney was stupid. Everybody was stupid.
Yeah. He's 14.
Because he was just like that, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't care, right, that I had forgiven him or not.
Yeah.
Now, during those 2 years, or not during those 2 years, 9 months, between 9 months and 2 years, one of the initial persons that helped me set the foundation up, I had, some friends of mine that helped me. One of them was a guy called Mike Reynolds. And he approached me in April. Tariq died in January, and he said to me, we went to lunch, he says, your son woke me up at 3 this morning. And the decision you've made to forgive, his killer and putting together this foundation has really inspired me. And I want to really get involved because it was like a life calling for him. He says, I'm a Green Beret. And I see that Tariq has strengths that most people don't.
Yeah.
So he interviewed Tony 22 times in between the 9 months and the 2 years, trying to explain to Tony that I wasn't about, revenge and retribution and anger and all of that, that I had empathy for him too.
Is he the voice inside the first book? Is that the
Yes.
that voice?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering who that was.
Yeah. Mike spent a lot of time with me, which was good for me too.
Yeah.
And he spent a lot of time with Tony.
Yeah.
And the day before the trial, Plez, which is Tony's grandfather, and Tony had a very much of a transformative conversation. Because that was the day that Plez sat down with Tony and inspired him to do the right thing. And he said, Daddy, Tony used to call his grandfather Daddy because Plez was his guardian. He got Tony at the age of 8. And he says, Daddy, don't worry. I will do the right thing. So at his sentencing, this is never happened in history of criminal justice in California.
Yeah.
At his sentencing, Tony says, I shot and killed Tariq Khamisa, a person I did not know who had not done anything wrong to me.
I saw that film, yeah.
You know. And then he says, I pray to God every day that Mr. Khamisa will forgive me for the pain and the harm that I've caused him. I already had forgiven him, but he asked for my forgiveness 2 years later, or 13, 15 months later, after that 9 months. And I thought to myself, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is really amazing, because what happens usually when you are tried for murder or any kind of a crime, what do they say? Not guilty, right?
Right.
Tony didn't say that.
Yeah.
He said, I am guilty. So there was never a trial, because usually what happens when you are tried for murder, right? Right? You get a trial, and if you're convicted, you get an automatic retrial.
Right.
He waived his right to the trial, because that was a hearing, not to try him for murder, but to talk about whether he should be tried as a juvenile or an adult.
Right.
No trial and no retrial. Saved California taxpayers millions. So what I learned from that is that if your forgiveness is authentic, there can't have any strings attached to it.
Right.
When I think about Tony, right, my blood pressure does not go up.
Yeah.
I get calmer.
Yeah.
I've created a lot of love for Tony in the foundation. Many of our board members and staff communicate with him. I write to him pretty much every month. We get a letter. And so the point I'm trying to make is that when your forgiveness is authentic, right, it's real, and no strings attached to it, I believe you're going to transform that other person.
Absolutely.
And if you don't,
check
in with the quality of your forgiveness. Not about him, it's about you.
That's full responsibility.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's not about them.
Yeah.
I get this a lot. What do you do if you forgive in your head but not in your heart?
Yeah.
Well, you haven't forgiven, is a short answer to that.
Yeah.
You haven't forgiven. Yeah. So, it has to be very complete. And I think that if you can do it that way, you're going to shift the other person.
Yeah. Well, your first book, From Murder to Forgiveness, is a must-read for everybody. Just the story itself is movie-like, and it's so compelling. And I put the web address right on the screen here where you can go and order that book, and you must read that book.
Yes.
That's a masterpiece. Thank you for that work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The eighth question is about family members, and this gets pretty tentative for some people because it's a soft spot, but what do I do if I've been violated or I'm being violated by a family member and I'm just having a really hard time forgiving them?
That happens a lot in our society, and the statistics are terrible. I think it's 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women that have suffered incest. A friend of mine actually has a foundation on incest. It's tougher when you have a family member. However, not to despair, you can still get through it. Yeah. So the first thing that I teach is that you've got to remove yourself from that situation. Yeah. And if you need help, there's a lot of help. There's a lot of organization. In my website, it's the bulletproofspirit.com, which is the title of my third book. We have listed several of these organizations that deal with this. Okay. So, and again, you need to remove yourself from that situation, because you don't want to be in a situation where this thing continues. But a lot of what I get is people later in life that were somehow abused when they were young, and they're dealing with it. And I'm doing a workshop July 17th, 18th, 19th. Yeah. It's essentially train the trainer, because I have developed a workshop to teach forgiveness, both on the area of forgiving somebody who's harmed. I get a lot of these family issues for a father, daughter, mother, son. And this is going to be a course for people that actually want to then take my materials and teach in other environments. They're going to get a lot of church practitioners, therapists.
What would you suggest, or what would you teach?
So what I'm teaching there is that once you have gotten away from, the the perpetrator, right? That you have to look at this and say, why did I attract this into my life?
Oh, that's tough.
It's a tough one
Yeah.
because whatever we attract in our life
Yeah.
is something because we do attract it. I mean, I attracted the death of my son, right? Which sounds very difficult.
To create.
But if you are spiritually resilient, right, you don't go and say, why me? That's a victim statement, right? If you attracted this to you, there was a reason. What part did you play in it? And the second piece here,
That's good. Yeah.
and the second piece in here is maybe, even if you did not attract it to you, right? Maybe there is a clue here from the universe to help you, to put you into your spiritual purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, so if I see that and say, okay, my spiritual purpose was to do the work I'm doing now in the Tariq Khamisa Foundation, and I also developed another program where we work with offenders and turn them around, or the work I'm doing in workshops and teaching forgiveness is I understand at a very deep level that losing my son, that there was every cloud is a silver lining.
Right.
The gift that was is it put me on my purpose, because the life I have today is far more nourishing, far more meaningful, and I have that sense of peace.
Yeah, it takes
in my heart.
It takes a high level of awareness to look inside a violation experience and say, inside there's my seed for something great. That, like Gene Houston uses that word, intelligee. Like a part of me, there's something greater inside of here.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you start to explore that?
Right. It's an introspective journey.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of growth if you can understand that whatever that thing you suffered with parents, that by able to understand and having some empathy for the family members, because many of these family members that were abusing their family members had a similar history.
And it goes on generation after
and that
generation.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
And so then you can create that empathy. And that not only that having suffered that, it is important then to take that experience and do something positive with it. So the piece there is to get involved. The piece there is to get involved. This is I would encourage people that, if your issue is that you were molested, by a family member, right? Then you now have that knowledge of how you were able to get through that piece. We have a lot of panelists that work for the Tariq Khamisa Foundation, ex-offenders. Some of the stories will just tear you up.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Tear you up. I mean, this was,
But they're so healing. The story itself is the
But
formula.
eventually they get to the point where they're able to forgive.
Yeah.
And forgive themselves, because most of them that were abused also did some very nasty acts.
Yeah.
And now when they get to that place of forgiveness and come and work for the foundation and working with kids, because this is something that really surprised me, because when we go to schools, okay, and we talk to middle school kids, talking 6th grade, 7th grade, 5th grade, every time. Okay, we've gone to the school, because we create a very safe environment. There's at least 2 or 3 kids that come and share with our panelists of abuse going on in their homes that the school did not know about. Every time. And then we can intervene and do something about it.
Yeah, that's the good work. Yeah.
So, and we have panelists that can help, these kids deal with this, rather than just have it pent up. And you can, create, whether it's child protection services, or you can create some kind of an intervention to remove that child from that abuse.
Yeah.
But later in life, I get that a lot in my workshops, because
Or they say this happened in my
childhood, and they haven't been able to get done with it. I mean, I just had one the other day, which was a lady that was abused by her father. And she was probably in her 40s. And still having a very difficult time with life, because it's very difficult to go on and build a meaningful relationship, till she was able finally to forgive and was able to see that at a spiritual level we attract everything that happens to us, that this now has now become something that she can take and help other girls that have gone through that same issue and do something positive with it.
Perfect.
I mean, it breaks your heart. I mean, I could tell you, even me, okay? I was taken advantage by my father in a business deal.
I read that, and how you resentful you were towards him.
I was angry for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Because I left Kenya, started in business here, and we left some businesses over there. I never got my share of my profits there. He kept it all. It was about money. It was about money.
Yeah, money.
It was my father.
I know.
And I thought, how the hell? I came out here. I got everybody out. I started life, and he was a partner with me, and I was angry for 2.5 years. And eventually, I thought to myself, I got to make a decision because this is about money.
Mm-hmm.
Do I own money, or does money own me?
Good question.
So then I made the decision, I don't want money to own me.
Yeah.
I own money. And then I was able to let go of it. Because if I own money, this whole argument for 2.5 years was over money.
Yeah.
What's more important, the relationship with my father or this money? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So I was able to forgive. And it was good. Actually, I was at a course that I spoke at where there was a lot of heirs of rich people that were fighting over the estate.
Yeah, I bet that was
And I
fun.
told this story.
Yeah.
About my father taking advantage of me, This is in the 70s. And I left that course, and this guy followed me. He was the professor that was teaching this course, and I just did a workshop within this course. And he said to me, hey, that was good because you were able to forgive your father. Later, you had to forgive the killer of your child. And it hadn't occurred to me.
Gotcha, It was practice.
Yes, so you can forgive the small stuff, right? We can all do that.
Yeah.
But that practice eventually gets you better at forgiving the bigger stuff. So there's a lot of angst in a lot of families, but you have to look at those hits. We call it in the book spiritual bullying. That unless you are able to then take that experience, right? Like a lot of the panelists we get at TKF that have gone through hell are now going back and helping other kids. And it is in that helping other kids that your healing will occur.
And that's the theme that's running through most of your work, is that constant reaching back out. And in the third book that you wrote on Bulletproof the Spirit, I love the theme bullet,
right?
And this death of your son.
Yeah, because we all have a bulletproof spirit. We're born with it. We're not in touch with it.
Yeah.
And what the book does, it gives you the information and the inspiration, because it's not much different, really. And we are all pretty well educated in this country. We've all are evolved human beings. So if you look at somebody who is spiritually resilient and somebody who's spiritually fragile, the only difference is information and inspiration.
And I put the website down here for them to get the information so they can get the inspiration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And we can all do it. That's the point I'm trying to make, that that there is a way out.
Yeah, with the right guidance. Yeah, good. Thank you. The ninth question is more personal, meaning, what do I do to forgive myself?
Yes. Yeah. And I think self-forgiveness is harder.
I agree.
It's harder.
Yeah.
Because most of us are tougher on us than anybody else.
Right.
Because, and I think I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I'm divorced, and I didn't spend a lot of my time with my kids. And one of my biggest regrets is that, I saw my kids 3-4 times a year, and they spent summer with me, and I talked to them on the phone twice a week, but I wasn't there to go to their sports and
in-between time.
In between, because I lived in different cities.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of guilt there, because he grew up with my ex-wife, and her and I have a good relationship, and I have a daughter here who came from Seattle. Tariq and her grew up there, and Tariq actually came to San Diego to be closer to me, because he and I had not spent that closeness time. And then after he died and I started the foundation, my daughter has a degree actually in social work, which is surprised me, because I thought she might follow me in the business world, but she loved social work, and her thesis was on juvenile delinquents.
Did she get involved with
Yes,
you?
yes, she was there for 6 years. Now she's a mother of 2. I have 2
Okay.
grandkids.
Yeah.
In fact, my first grandkid, his middle name is Tariq.
See, what a wonderful path that all
Yeah,
opened
and
up.
see, you think when she graduated from the University of Washington, my son was alive.
Yeah, right.
So it was strange. So,
Yeah.
so I think forgiving yourself
Yeah.
is a harder piece. So I teach, there are 4 steps there. And forgiving somebody's harmed you, we talked about that earlier, there are 3 steps. So here there are 4 steps. And I think that for me now, although I didn't spend so much time with Tariq,
Yeah.
I spend
Your whole life.
oodles of time with Tariq every day.
Yeah.
I repeat his name so many
Yeah.
times every day, you know.
Yeah.
So we work together from a spiritual level,
Yeah.
right? And that's a joy.
Oh, wow.
Because every time I speak to kids, I say, Tariq,
Yeah.
are you ready?
Mm.
We speak together,
Mm.
you know, and you'll say, "Ah, Dad, I'm ready," and I'm always with you. And he's here right now. I can
Yeah.
feel his presence,
I
you
got
know. So I'm living a life both for him and for me.
Mm.
So I think that
Talk to us about the 4 steps.
yeah, the 4 steps. The first step is to take responsibility for your actions. Because when you are trying to forgive yourself, you've done something wrong.
Mhm.
Typically, we blame somebody else. You
Yeah.
know, my father, the country, whatever. You know, you have to take responsibility. We all make mistakes.
I heard blame. Be lame.
Right. Be lame is good, yeah. So I think that takes some courage,
Yeah.
is to say, you know, I did screw up.
Yeah.
So that's the first step.
Yeah.
Second step is ask forgiveness of the people you hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's granted or not is not important.
Hmm.
But it's your responsibility to ask forgiveness
Now,
of
let
the
me just,
people you
the
hurt.
distinction between, instead of saying, I'm sorry, which is different than, would you forgive me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think forgiveness is much deeper.
Yeah.
I've coined this word cellular.
Cellular.
Yeah, it's a play on the word cellular.
Yeah, got it.
Because modern science will tell you we are trillions of cells.
Yeah.
So whatever the medicines that are produced essentially interfere with the chemistry of the cell. Because you know, basically we live in it's chemistry going on in our body.
Yeah.
But what I've found out in the work that I'm doing is that cellular shifts are far more deeper than cellular shifts.
Yeah.
When you transform at that cellular level,
Yeah.
right,
It's permanent.
your DNA sequence rearranges.
Yeah.
It's permanent.
Yeah.
It sustains. I'm not the same human being I was when my son was alive. I'm a better person. Not that I was a bad person, but we can all be better people,
Yeah.
right?
You're different.
Yes, we're different. But
Yeah.
So, you know, I have a lot more, I'm not as self-indulged as I was,
Yeah.
you know, because it was me, more me.
Yeah.
Now it's about, you know, making a difference in the life of children and the world.
Mm-hmm.
So this cellular shift is where forgiveness lives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry is more of a mental thing.
Yeah.
So when I go deeper than
I'm
that.
sorry is more about me.
Right.
Yeah. Forgiveness is more about us.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a cellular level that when I and Ples came together, you know, there was that magic energy,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a lot of love for each other because we spent a lot of time together, a lot of respect and trust, which we talked about in the formula for peace. But that respect and trust came as a result of my forgiveness and that sustained goodwill over 15 years. And this love that I have, that Ples has for me and that I have for him is very palpable. When you see us together, you get it. The energy is there. I can't put it into words, but you will pick up on that energy.
So the third step would be?
So third step is to forgive yourself, because first you've taken responsibility.
Right.
Second, you've asked for forgiveness. Forgive yourself. And the way to do that is the fourth step is you redeem yourself by making sure that you first have changed your behavior. Whatever it was that you did, you can never do again. You made that cellular shift, right? You're a different person, and you're going to help somebody else not make the same mistake you did. It's a give back. It's a redemption piece.
Pay it forward.
It's like pay it forward.
Yeah.
It's like all those panelists that come work for us, that they went through such hell in living gang-banging life. Now they're helping other kids not make the same mistake. It's Tony when he will join us. As Tony joins us, and I'm helping him forgive himself because it's harder for him.
Oof, can you imagine?
So I do a monthly newsletter. I send it to him every month, and you know he responds back to me. But a lot of what I talk about is the stuff that helps him. But the biggest forgiveness for him will come when he joins the foundation and tells his testimony, right?
Right.
Think about the power when he says to these kids, when I was 11, I joined a gang. When I was 14, I murdered Mr. Khamisa's son. I've spent the last umpteen years in prison, and I'm here to tell you it's not worth it. I wish I could put the clock back. Think about the power of that. And he says, in my heart of hearts, we've saved him.
Yeah.
But he will save tens of thousands of other kids. Because they'll get it. Because it was his finger that pulled the trigger. And the intonations in his voice will shift a lot of kids. Because he feels it at that cellular level. So that's the redemption piece. And the more Tony does that, the easier it'll be for him to forgive himself.
Yeah.
It's a harder one than the other one.
Well,
but this is the formula.
You have to have that vehicle to do it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's in the doing
Yeah.
where the healing comes in,
Yeah.
both on the forgiveness sides.
Yeah.
So you got to take that energy and do something. Because I really think that we're here for one purpose, to serve humanity. Now, whether maybe it's environment.
But it's a doing.
Yeah, exactly. We are here to serve.
Yeah.
Right? In the totem pole of humanity, kids come first because they rely on us. So you're here to serve, and it's one of the things that has blessed me. That the work that I'm doing today is God's work. And I just was in Dallas. I did 13 presentations in 2 days. When I got there, I thought I've never in my life done that. 12 of them were to middle school kids, and one was to adults. And I thought, how am I going to have energy to do this? But when you're doing God's work, you don't need the energy. The Spirit provides the energy. In fact, I got stronger as the days went on and the presentations went on, because it blew me away. I left there thinking, if you're doing God's work and if you're serving humanity, it gives you all the resources you need. There's energy or money or whatever, But service is really where it is.
Yeah. Good. Well, we put a website on the screen here so our listeners and our viewers can go to and find out more about all the books and all the materials that you've produced. So thank you.
Welcome, Joe.
Yeah. The 10th question of the most commonly asked questions that people seek advice on is, what do I do to restore trust?
Right.
Yeah.
It's another great question, because you don't want to go through life not trusting. And when you're hit, trust is a very difficult thing to restore. A lot of us go into that victimhood space. And if you're going through life being suspicious and mistrusting everybody you're going to meet or their intentions, again, there's no quality of life there. And I think that, again, the way you restore trust is to understand that we all have a bulletproof spirit. And that everything that has happened to us at a spiritual level, we've attracted. And that the Spirit lives within us. And if we can connect with the Spirit, it will help us get through most all of life's challenges. Meditation to me is a daily practice. I meditate 3 times a day, a total of 2 hours.
Talk about your meditation practice.
My meditation practice, actually, at night, I do half an hour. Let me explain. My meditation practice is about, meditation is when you have no thought or mantra. Because what happens is, a mind is a thought-making machine. So a thought, another thought, another thought, another thought. But you can't think of 2 things at the same time. In between 2 thoughts is this infinitesimal split-second piece called the gap. As you meditate, you can make that gap bigger. Even the most experienced meditators get seconds in the gap. But half a second, the gap is very powerful, because where there is no thought or mantra is where there is spirit, where there is God. So to meditate, you need the time in the gap. Obviously, you want to create a practice that essentially is more, gives you the propensity to get you in that space. So I've been meditating for 30 years, So I've studied all forms of meditation. So I've developed this practice and this guided meditation on my website which talks about the method. And then there's 2 guided meditation. One is on forgiveness. One is on manifesting your vision or your goals. So to get into the gap, what I've learned is if you meditate only once a day, you're not going to get in the gap. Well, that took 10 years to figure that one out. It's true. If you meditate twice a day, you increase your propensity or your probability to experience the gap.
Any time during the day, or is it?
No, so now what I do it 3 times.
Yeah.
So at night, I just meditate. I look at, because it's a busy day,
Yeah.
emails, phone calls, So I look at my mind as full of thoughts,
Yeah.
like a basket of apples. I just empty my mind. I don't try and get in the gap.
Yeah.
I just empty it, take it, and some of these apples creep back in,
Yeah.
Well, those are the things you've got to look at, because
Yeah.
those are the issues that you need to deal with.
Yeah.
Maybe forgiveness can come in here. But then I go to sleep with an empty head, with basket. Then you dream, which is also processing. So I get up in the middle of the night around 4 o'clock and meditate an hour, which most people don't want to do, which is fine. But I get up anyway, and, drink water and go to the bathroom, and then I meditate, and I'll do an hour, but I will do whatever it takes for me to experience the gap.
Yeah.
And I usually always get it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the morning when I wake up again, I go back to sleep, and sleep very nice, very soundly. In the morning when I wake up, I do another half an hour before I start my day. I look at my day, and I manifest whatever outcome I want to try and create. A lot of it is creating healing and transformation, as was my meditation this morning through this interview. But I always add that what I really want to create is an outcome that is in the highest good for you, for me, for the universe, and everybody who's watching it. So it really brings the spirit into play. So restoring trust comes from that spiritual piece if you get into the meditation. Because what happens, most of us live in our heads, 97%,
99%.
yeah, and some of us live in our hearts.
Yeah.
Well, what I found out is that if you want real resolutions in life, it's not going to come from your intellect.
Yeah.
When Tariq died, right, my degrees in math and finance, and I went to some pretty good schools in England, were useless,
Yeah.
right? And those of us think, well, look, I live in my heart as well. Well, the heart is where emotion resides. There's no rudder in the heart. I mean, how often do we get carried away by our emotions? All the time, right? So I tell people now, if you want to make a big decision, or if you want to create a big outcome, or if you want to restore trust, right? Don't rely just on your intellect. Go in there.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a good mind.
Yeah.
It's a rationalized. A mind is something like a computer. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? It's essentially an analytical instrument.
Yeah.
So yeah, go to your head. Does it make sense? Yeah, I want to restore trust. It does make sense.
Yeah.
Go to your heart. Don't stop at your head. Does it feel good? Nothing wrong with the feeling heart. Don't stop there. Because sometimes what makes sense and feels good, not always a right decision. I see you laughing at it.
I'm sure
We've all done that.
Yeah, of course.
We all get carried away, right?
Heartache.
So, yes, lots of that.
Yeah.
So go to your soul. Go to your spirit. Is it inspiring? Now you got it.
Yeah, you got
Because you've got the spirit working with you. Makes sense, feels good, it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Now that's going to be a good decision.
Yeah.
And you can restore trust, you can restore anything through that if you can figure out that you have that bulletproof spirit. You've got to connect with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And if you go to the website, they can listen to the meditation.
Yes.
And I put the website address right on the screen there for them, and that would be a wonderful tool, a wonderful gift. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, Joe.